Danielle entering bank, wide lobby view, first tension. A black woman walked into a bank she had spent years building, but the moment she stepped inside, something felt wrong. The looks. The whispers. The quiet judgment that followed her every step across the polished floor. Within seconds, a security guard began moving toward her. Staff members exchanged uneasy glances. To them, she didn't look like someone who belonged there. What happened next was humiliating, painful, and completely unexpected. Because the woman they were treating like a stranger, wasn't just a customer. She was the one person in that building with the power to change everything. But by the time they realized the truth, it was already too late. One moment of prejudice was about to expose a problem far bigger than a single bank, and the consequences would shake the entire institution. The real question is, how could the people working in her own bank fail to recognize the woman who built it? And what happens when the person you underestimate holds all the power? Close up on Danielle's face, capturing subtle apprehension. For most people, walking into a bank is an ordinary moment. A quick visit. A short transaction. Then life moves on. But for Danielle Carter, that building represented something much deeper. Years earlier, Danielle had started with almost nothing. Raised by a single mother in a small apartment, she grew up watching how hard life could be when opportunities were limited. While other kids dreamed about fame or sports, Danielle dreamed about something different, building something powerful enough to change lives. She studied finance relentlessly, worked late nights, and slowly climbed a ladder that many people believed someone like her could never reach. Eventually, her determination paid off. Danielle became the CEO of one of the fastest-growing banks in the city. But despite the success, she never liked flashy entrances or public attention. She preferred quiet visits, observing the business she had built without the spotlight of executives and cameras. That morning was supposed to be one of those quiet visits. No announcements. No staff meetings. Just a simple walk through the branch to see how things were running. The bank lobby was busy when Danielle stepped through the doors. Customers filled the waiting area. Employees rushed between counters. At first, no one recognized her. And that was exactly how Danielle preferred it. But within seconds, something changed. The glances started. The whispers followed. And slowly, the atmosphere in the room began to shift in a way that felt unsettling. Danielle had spent years building this bank. Yet standing there in the middle of the lobby, it suddenly felt like she didn't belong at all. And the moment security started walking toward her, everything was about to change. Manager Samantha dismissively speaking to Danielle, prejudice visible. The room went silent. The customers froze. Employees exchanged shocked glances. Some faces turned pale, others looked away, shame creeping into their expressions. For the first time, the people who had judged her without knowing her realized the truth. Every second of disbelief stretched into eternity, as Danielle walked slowly toward the center of the lobby, her presence impossible to ignore. The guard, stiff and unsure, took a step back. The manager's eyes widened, her earlier confidence crumbling. Danielle didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout. She simply let the weight of reality do the work. In that instant, the power dynamics flipped completely. The same institution that had humiliated her now witnessed her authority, undeniable and unshakable. Every whisper, every doubt, every act of prejudice in that room had collided with the undeniable truth. Danielle had built more than just a bank. She had built a legacy. And as she reached the main counter, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces, a single question echoed in the minds of everyone present: how could they have been so blind, for so long? The moment of reckoning had arrived, and nothing in that bank would ever be the same again. Walking to the bank through city streets, emphasizing urban realism. For a moment, silence. Then, something she never anticipated, a scoff, not from a stranger, but from someone behind the counter. A manager, rolling her eyes as though Danielle had said something impossible. Right, the manager muttered, dismissive, before looking back down at her paperwork. Danielle's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with a simmering anger. Years of late nights, board meetings, and overcoming systemic barriers had brought her here, and now, in her own bank, she was treated like an intruder. But she didn't show it. Not yet. She let the guard continue, letting the employees believe they had control over the situation. Then the whispers turned into murmurs. A few customers shifted in their seats, craning their necks to see the confrontation unfolding. Some exchanged glances, silent questions passing between them. Danielle could feel the weight of every eye, every misjudged assumption. It wasn't just personal, it was systemic. She understood, better than most, how often people like her were underestimated, ignored, or outright denied respect. Minutes stretched painfully. The security guard stepped closer, blocking her path subtly, like a silent challenge. Danielle's fingers twitched slightly, but she stayed composed. The tension in the room was almost tangible, a current pulsing through every corner of the lobby. And then came the final misstep. The manager leaned over the counter, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I don't think you should be here right now. This isn't a place for someone like you." A hush fell over the room. Danielle's heart beat faster, not from fear but from disbelief. The audacity. The ignorance. The sheer assumption that her presence needed to be questioned. She could feel it, the turning point approaching, the moment that would either break the fragile calm or shatter it completely. Because what Danielle was about to do next wouldn't just teach a lesson to the people in this room, it would expose a truth far bigger than any single act of discrimination. And as she took a step forward, the tension snapped like a wire, leaving the entire bank on the edge of chaos. Every second that followed would test patience, courage, and the undeniable reality of who truly held the first confrontation with security guard Marcus, tension rising. Danielle stood frozen for a heartbeat, watching the manager lean back smugly, certain she had won. The security guard had stepped closer, a subtle wall between her and the counters she had built. Every whisper, every glance, every assumption felt like a weight pressing down on her. She could almost hear the unspoken question hanging in the air, who does she think she is? Then, something shifted. Danielle's chest tightened, not with fear, but with a surge of clarity and determination. Years of struggle, of breaking through doors that were never meant to open, all led to this moment. She raised her head, her voice calm but firm, carrying the authority that had taken her years to earn. "I am the CEO of this bank," she said, each word slicing through the tension in the room like a knife. "I built this institution. I oversee every branch, every account, every policy. And right now, you are standing in front of me, treating me as if I do not belong here." Manager Samantha dismissively speaking to Danielle, prejudice visible. The room went silent. The customers froze. Employees exchanged shocked glances. Some faces turned pale, others looked away, shame creeping into their expressions. For the first time, the people who had judged her without knowing her realized the truth. Every second of disbelief stretched into eternity, as Danielle walked slowly toward the center of the lobby, her presence impossible to ignore. The guard, stiff and unsure, took a step back. The manager's eyes widened, her earlier confidence crumbling. Danielle didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout. She simply let the weight of reality do the work. In that instant, the power dynamics flipped completely. The same institution that had humiliated her now witnessed her authority, undeniable and unshakable. Every whisper, every doubt, every act of prejudice in that room had collided with the undeniable truth. Danielle had built more than just a bank. She had built a legacy. And as she reached the main counter, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces, a single question echoed in the minds of everyone present: how could they have been so blind, for so long? The moment of reckoning had arrived, and nothing in that bank would ever be the same again. Wide-angle lobby view showing murmurs, suspense, and multiple characters reacting. The tension in the bank slowly began to dissolve, but the impact of those moments lingered like a shadow. Danielle didn't need to raise her voice or demand respect, her presence alone had shifted everything. Employees who had doubted her now saw the truth in her calm authority, the kind that comes from years of resilience, intelligence, and perseverance. Customers who had stared in judgment now watched in quiet awe, realizing how easily assumptions could blind them to reality. Danielle walked through the lobby, observing the subtle changes, the shame in some eyes, the cautious respect in others. She knew that one confrontation wouldn't erase the prejudice that existed in the world outside these walls. But in that moment, she had created a ripple, a small, undeniable victory against the subtle, everyday injustices that so many faced. Outside the bank, life continued as usual, but inside, something fundamental had changed. Danielle's quiet strength had exposed the fragility of bias, the assumptions that can distort perception, and the harsh reality that so many talented, capable people face simply because of the color of their skin. Danielle asserting authority, all eyes on her, power reversal visible. For Danielle, the incident was more than a personal triumph. It was a reminder of why her work mattered, not just in finance, but in shaping a culture where respect and competence are recognized above prejudice. It was proof that courage, dignity, and unwavering self-belief could confront injustice head-on, even in the smallest, most unexpected places. Close-up of Danielle's face and manager's shocked reaction, emotional peak. And for anyone watching this story, the lesson is clear, the world is full of assumptions we rarely challenge. Moments like these expose them. The real question remains, how often do we let judgment and bias dictate our actions before realizing the truth? Danielle's story isn't just about one CEO, one bank, or one moment of humiliation. It's a reflection of a much larger reality, one that millions experience daily. The challenge now is ours: will we continue to see people for what they are, or for what we assume them to be? Danielle walking past employees and customers, subtle triumph. Because change begins the moment someone dares to confront the injustice, and the question is, who will take that step next? Danielle outside bank, reflecting quietly, sense of resilience. Danielle Carter standing outside the bank on the city sidewalk, taking in a deep breath, subtly proud. The urban streets move around her, unaware of the transformative moment that just occurred inside. Danielle in her office overlooking the city, contemplative and hopeful, thematic closure. Later, she returns to her office, seated behind her desk, looking out over the city skyline at sunset. Calm, reflective, and resilient, Danielle contemplates the work ahead, not just for the bank, but for a world where respect must be earned, not assumed.